Okay, so this is going to be my photo right here that I'm going to mount to a mat board. So the first thing that I need to do before I even get the board out is I need to adhere the dry mount tissue to the back of this photograph. Okay, so there's two types in here. There's this little one, it's a little bit yellower. This is a 5x7 sheet. Okay, so this one should fit no problem. Okay, the other one that's in here is a little bit bigger. It's in this bag. It's a different color. Okay, you can use these as well. If you use this, even the little scraps are reusable. So if you use a bigger sheet for some reason, you don't want to do this, right? Because then you have to cut it out of the middle. But when we adhere this to the back, you want to kind of butt it up against two of the edges. So then it's less work for you to cut that out. But also we have bigger scraps. You just have to make two cuts and you have bigger scraps that we can reuse. Okay? And these scraps we can put in this drawer right here. So there's a little pile of scraps. If they're little dinky scraps or little like hairline pieces, we don't need those, just throw those away. But if they're big, nice, juicy pieces, let's definitely save those. Okay? Because later on, if we ever were really low, you can totally like piecemeal this, like put a piece like that, and then cut that off, and that's totally fine. Okay? So we're going to use the dry mount tissue. So for right now, these 5x7 ones are very perfect. So I'll grab one of those. So we're going to mount these photographs onto mat board, and this process is called dry mounting. Okay? It's called dry mounting because we are not using wet glue. Okay? We're using, in this drawer right here, it says dry mount tissue. We're using a paper, which is like a dry glue, and we use heat to melt this on the back of our paper onto the mat board. Does that make sense? Okay, so this process is called dry mounting, and we use a hot press. Okay, so I need to adhere this to the back of the photograph right now. Okay, so what I want to do, if you guys can see this behind me, I want to get this as close to the edge as possible, or two of the edges. It might overhang a little bit, and that's fine. But I want to make sure that two of the edges, so this edge and this edge, the glue is right up against it, and then if it overhangs these other two edges, that's totally fine. Okay? So that is set right here. These little things are weights that we're going to use in this process. So I'm just going to get that and hold that so I don't have to worry about that right now. And then we're going to use, right now, these are called hot irons, or hot wands, tacking irons. So we're going to use these things. So we control, there's two of them on either side. And these have been on, I've been warming them up since I got here. So there's a little switch. We just control that with the power switch right here. Okay, so I'm going to take this tacking iron, and all I want to do right now is just stick this lightly onto here. So I'm just going to drag this across the middle of my photo and just melt a little bit of that on there. Okay, sometimes I see people when they're like ironing the whole thing. Like, we don't have to do that. We don't want to do that. Okay. So that's where I want it now. So now just the middle, you can see that the middle is just glued down. Okay, and that's how we want it, and you'll see why later. Okay? So now this is tacked. Now I can start prepping this photo, and then I can start getting my mat board cut. Okay? Okay. So I have this photograph. The glue is tacked onto the back. So that's the first thing that you want to do when you're doing this process. Now what I can do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to trim the edges of this photograph to get it exactly how I want. And that will also trim down the glue, the dry mount tissue on the back. Okay, so that they'll fit perfectly. Okay, so that's why we want to do that first. So so that we can cut those together. So I'm going to bring this over to my cutting board. My first cut, how I like to do it is I like to eyeball it. Okay, my first cut. So when I'm doing that, I'm looking at the picture, and I want to cut off on here. I want to cut off this white all around there. Sometimes it's nice to leave it on, and then you would want to trim that so it's all nice and clean. But I'm going to cut it down so I'm just seeing the picture on here. Okay, so I'm going to slide that underneath, and I'm gonna use the metal edge on here to line this up. So I'm going to line up the corner over here, and then I'm going to line up this bottom corner. Once I get this first corner lined up, I can hinge it and then line up that second corner. And that looks like it's going to be my first cut. So I'm going to hold this straight and cut that off of there. So if you guys can see, I cut the top edge off, and I got that just how I want it. Okay. After that, we want this corner to be nice and the corners to be square. Okay, so after I do my first cut, now I'm going to use the ruler on the back edge to line this up, and that'll give me a really nice 90-degree angle. Okay, so now I can slide that along the ruler, and I'm still watching here and here, my 2 points, to make sure that I get it overhanging and I'm trimming it exactly how I want. Okay, so I cut that. So I made my second cut. See how clean that is? That's nice, huh? Okay, so now I can go a little bit quicker. So my first cut, I eyeball. That's how I like to do it. And then all the other cuts are angled. They're angle cut according to my first cut. Okay, so your first cut's pretty important. But now I have my dry mount tissue is cut exactly to the size, and that's how we want that. Okay?
I'm going to get mine.
All right.
In the morning to do.
So I just cut this photograph. I trimmed the white edges off of it, and my glue is adhered onto the back. So it's all nice and cut and ready to be mounted. So now I need to cut my mat board. Okay? So in these cabinets right here, we've got gray, white, and black. So you guys need to pick out which background you think is going to work best for your photograph. So this image right here, there are some blacks in it, a little tiny bit, but there's a lot of grayscale in here, a lot of gray tones. So I don't think that a gray mat board, I don't think that a gray mat board would be really nice on this. You know, I don't think that would help this make this image pop. You know, maybe white would be better to help with some of those gray tones. White might be nice. Or maybe black. It's not black, folks. So maybe black will work. Okay, but I think I kind of like the white the best. Yeah. I think I kind of like the white the best. What do you guys think? I definitely think gray is out.
I like the black.
You like black?
Yeah.
Who likes black better?
White,
Black.
Who likes white? Who likes black? All right, let's do black. Okay, so I'll do black here. One thing to note, sometimes this trips people up, but if you pull out a white board, you saw on the back sides of those two boards, it was white. On the gray and the black, it was white. On the back of white, it's cream, which could be another color, but rarely. But just so you can differentiate between the two. So if we have, watch your fingers. If we have big cuts, we can throw those down underneath here. Okay. I might just pull it off the board just to show you guys how to cut it properly. So I'll use black to cut this. I'll use a whole sheet of black. So when I cut this, in this studio, what we want, our studio standard for the borders is 2 by 2 by 2 by 2.5. Okay? And if you forget that, which is easy to forget, it's up here. It's 2 by 2 by 2 by 2.5. Okay, so these are our borders. You like that? So we want to have 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches, and 2.5 on the bottom. Okay, so that's our border standard in this studio. We definitely do different borders. That's just what our default mode, how we start. We have 2.5 on the bottom because on the left, in quotation marks in pencil, we do the title, and on the right, in pencil, we sign your name.
Why pencil?
It's just kind of the nicest, I think, on matte board. It's not glossy like ink might be. If you need to erase it, which hopefully you don't need to, it's manageable.
Wouldn't it like rub off though?
It could rub off, but hopefully you're producing stuff that's so nice you want to frame it, and then it's protected in that way. But yeah, you know, I mean, in general, you want to be cautious with these matte boards, so you're not like, especially the white ones, you're not like getting fingerprints all over it and stuff. So I mean, you'd want to be cautious with these anyways. But pencil for sure is what we use. It's, you know, I've had kids turn it into me in Sharpie. Dude, that's like, it just looks wrong. You know, I want to keep it clean, crisp, pencil, not pen. Okay. But these are the borders that we use. Okay, so this is our default method. Got it? We know our borders that we want on this. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys an easy trick to cut the correct borders. Okay? So we're going to start using this cutter here. It's not a toy. Okay, so you know, respect. And this thing works best. Some of the newer ones, they're really, you know, when you push it down, it's just, it cuts really nice. This one's a little older and weathered. Most of the ones you will encounter are older. So when you cut this, when you bring this down, you want to kind of pull the arm in just a little bit, so it cuts down really nicely. As opposed to if you just go straight, sometimes as you just go straight, it can like hop over and give you, you know, it didn't even cut all the way. You see that? So sometimes stuff like that will happen where it doesn't cut, but if you pull it in just a little bit, it gives you a nice clean edge. Okay? So make sure as you're bringing this down that you're just pulling it in a little bit. So now I'm going to cut a whole mat board for this little piece, for this little image right here. So again, I want to be conservative with my cuts. I want to save as much as possible. So I want to figure out how that I want to view this image and where my bottom is going to be. Okay? So I think that I want to view the image like this. So I want to view it like that, because these horses are on their side, and that'll make the brick wall behind it make sense, as opposed to like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So these horses, when the image was taken, were on their side, and you can tell, especially because of the brick wall in the background. So this is my bottom right here. This is my bottom edge. When I'm going to make 2 cuts to get this mat board how I want it. Okay, so my first cut is important because I'm going to be cutting for the top of my image, the top border, which is 2 inches, right, and the bottom border, which is 2.5 inches. So the total extra that I need is 4.5 inches, right? Okay, so what I want to do here is I want to slide this mat board. I want to put the image in the back corner, and I'm going to slide that mat board all the way up so that the front end of the image here meets up with 4.5. Okay, so that'll give me my 2.5 on the bottom and my 2 on the top. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm going to make sure this is lined up, check my line here, make sure that this is straight, and then I'm going to hold this really steady as I bring this down. Okay, in one nice clean cut. All right. So now I can lift this up again. I'm going to rotate this whole thing, and now I'm going to cut for the extra that I need for the sides. Okay, so I need 2 inches on this side and 2 inches on this side. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to butt it up against the back corner, and I'm going to slide the front corner up this time to the 4. Does that make sense? And I'm going to check to make sure that this back line is angled how I want it. And then I can do my last cut. So now I've got all the borders cut how I want. So when I line that up, it should be perfect. Okay? We're ready to glue this thing onto the mat board and finish it up. Okay? So one tool that you're going to need to make sure that this thing is totally, the lines, the borders are parallel to each other, and that your image isn't turned weird a little bit or on accident, is in the bottom here are these two mounting tools. Okay? So there's these two L's, and these are our standard again. So that this is cut, so 2 inches here. This one says bottom, so that's 2.5 inches. So when we bring these over here, we can line this up with the edges, and then we can drop our picture, and the rest should be great. So I got my mat board cut. I have my image cut, my photo cut with the glue on the back. So now I'm ready to put this under the hot press here and fuse this all together. So I'm going to one last time line this up. So I happen to get this one that says bottom, okay, and then it has a side here. The other one back there is just, it's cut for the two sides. So whichever one you grab, just note that there's a difference. So I'm going to first line the edges of this up with the mat board, just like this, okay, and then I can drop my photograph in there. Make sure that's lined up. And then what I want to do is just put a weight on it right in the middle. Okay? So when we put this in here, sometimes what happens is people accidentally, when they put it in there, the photo twists. We don't want that to happen. So what we want to do is tack this down. So I'm going to take my tacking iron, and I'm just going to, in a couple spots, just melt the glue on there. And that right there is probably enough. I'll just do a little one extra on this side. One thing that you don't want to do, which we see, is people drag the tacking iron across and off the edge, and then you get a little, that melted glue comes off and out from behind your photograph. So you don't want to drag it out. You just want to kind of tack down one of those little corners. Okay? But now this thing is stuck on there, so it's in its perfect placement. So now I can pick this up. If I don't have time to finish it today, I can come back and do this tomorrow. Okay. So this thing's ready to go. So this is the hot press here. There's a handle behind it, so you grab this and push it all the way down. Okay. These things need to warm up. It takes a minute. So if you come in and they're not on, you turn it on, and then you gotta give it 10 minutes to warm up. It should be, it's on here, but it should be between 200 and 250. Okay, so it works after 200 degrees. So you need to let it warm up to at least that point. But when you look under here, there's two pieces of newsprint, and then there's this laminated piece. This acts as kind of like a weight to make sure everything's pushed down and flat. So I'm going to put the mat and the photograph in between the two pieces of newsprint. Okay? And then when I lay that down, this top sheet kind of makes sure everything's pressed nice. Okay? So this thing's hot enough. It's in place. I'm ready to melt the glue. So I want to make note of where the second hand is on the clock. So right now it just passed the 9, so I'm going to drop this. Okay, this takes 30 to 45 seconds is all you really need. So you know, make sure you document where you're, or make note of where you're at. Okay, so we've surpassed 30 seconds, so I can push this back. Okay, and then I can pull my image out. And now it's really nicely, it's just totally welded on there. Okay, so it's not going to have curling corners that look kind of unsightly, but it's just going to have really nice kind of a flat adhered surface. Okay. The last thing you need to do, this thing heated up the cardboard a whole lot, which can start to warp it. It can warp the cardboard a little bit. So the last thing you want to do when you pull it out of the hot press is we want to put it under this steel plate right here. It's called a cold press. So I can just lift up the handles and use it from either side and just slide this under there for a minute or so. What the cold press does is it sucks the heat out of it while pressing it cold so that it's less likely to warp. Okay? After this, you can put your name on it, sign it, and put your title on it, and then it's ready to be turned in for a grade.